Hey, what's up, everybody? And by the way, before we get to this, Tara, if you don't mind, Tara Talmadge, we're on Facebook Live. Can you turn that monitor on for me? Appreciate it. You gotta love Facebook Live. Anyway, Mike Irwin with Drew Ammon here, Big Trail Nation, and obviously a lot of news this morning on Eric Musselman out of Nevada that he is in the final stages of a contract negotiation to finalize that deal and become the next head coach at Arkansas. Again, multiple reports coming out saying that this news is going down, that this is going to be the deal, that Eric Musselman is the next head hog. Mike, when you saw a lot of these reports this morning, your takeaways, given the fact this is a guy that is from Nevada who over the past 4 years has won 110 games.
You know, let's go back to last night. That's when I first started hearing it. I wasn't certain, and you certainly don't want to break a story like that unless you're sure. And there were some things that didn't add up. There's some things that still don't add up. There's some national writers that are basically saying this announcement is imminent. My experience with coaching searches and hires is that you don't make an announcement until that coach has talked to his own players. And to date, to this moment, that hasn't happened. Now again, a lot of these reports last night had Musselman coming in here on a plane this morning. You know, it's hard to believe that he would leave there in Reno, Nevada, and come in here having not talked to his players. So that's the timing of it. I'm fairly certain it's going to happen. I'm not sure there's going to be an announcement today. I don't know. There's some confusion about whether or not he came in last Tuesday. Let's back up and really start this coaching search where it really started, which was with Kelvin Sampson on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hunter Yurachek had some conversations with Kelvin Sampson prior to that about whether or not he would be interested in coming to Arkansas when the season was over, and Sampson said yes. So Yurachek called him Monday to start negotiating and found out right off the bat that Sampson and Houston lost their game on Friday, so this is the following Monday. And Sampson told him, look, I've gotten a new contract. I'm happy with it. I'm going to stay. Now, we now believe that the key part of that contract was that his son, Kelvin Sampson, would be named coach in waiting. Now, there was a story that was out there, and I just told people that's what I'd heard, that was the deal breaker with him. And I was called by somebody inside the athletic department that wanted me to know that was incorrect, that there was never any deal close to being made, because as soon as Arkansas Hunter Yurachek talked to Sampson, he found out that it was not going to happen. So there was no discussion about whether there'd be a coach in waiting from the Sun or whatever. So then the next day, Hunter Yurachek apparently at that point moved on to Musselman. And there were all these, if you go back to Tuesday, remember there was all these reports that he was in town, that people had seen him, people didn't see him. We had people over at the arena, the press conference thing was set up. And so I was again talking with somebody inside the athletic department, and they said, do you think that if we brought a guy in here to look at our facilities, that we would do it in broad daylight with the arena wide open? He said it would be done at night, or it might be done on a Sunday when the arena is closed. So I thought from that maybe he didn't actually come in. You remember his wife said he didn't come in here, that he never left town.
That was in the Reno Gazette-Journal. They reported that.
She said he never left. I'm getting some information within the last 5 minutes that what may have happened is they indeed brought him in on Monday night. And he was only here very briefly, but he did see things, so he saw what he needed to say. Now, I was told by somebody I've known for years that there was a meeting at 11 a.m. Tuesday morning. I don't know if it was the whole board, but it was Yurachek with at least some board members. And Musselman's name was brought up. It was like, okay, what are we going to do here? And one of those board members had some concerns because he'd gotten a call from somebody that knew Musselman that said, oh, he's real volatile, he's in your face, he's an intense guy. Yeah. He's all this stuff, and right now, based on what I've been told, I might vote no. Yurachek didn't call for a vote at that point. He then, the next night, brought Marshall in here, Gregg Marshall from Wichita State. He looked around. There are two different versions of what happened there. Some say Arkansas made him a decent offer, and his family and his kids and his wife, they all just said, look, we think you should stay, so he decided to stay and went back. Others say that they were not going to offer him a contract paying him more than Hunter Yurachek, so they offered him a little bit less than that with some backloaded incentives that would take him up. Chad Morris, what I say?
Yeah, you said Yurachek, that's right.
Yeah, Chad Morris, the football coach, and they offered him a contract that would be backloaded maybe in years 2, 3, 4, and 5 that would get him eventually up over $4 million into a significant raise, and that he rejected that. So at that point, then the speculation then turned to, well, maybe they are indeed going to sit around until Monday now and wait to see, or Tuesday, and wait to see what Chris Beard at Texas Tech would do. But I never believed that. I just thought, I didn't think that's what the holdup was. And so again, last night I started getting these. They're flying out. They're going after Musselman. They're bringing him back. The only thing that doesn't jive with me right now is the timing of all this. I just can't see him coming. Now, he may have indeed come in, so that would mean he's seen the facilities.
Yep.
But somebody suggested to me that that Juracek, we don't know where he is, so he could be in Minneapolis. And it's possible Musselman is up there, and they've done their negotiations up there. They're going to fly him back there today, let him tell his players, and then on to here, but there wouldn't be an official announcement tomorrow. But then again, you know, these things don't always follow a pattern. I guess it could still happen this afternoon.
Yeah, well, look, when you get to the Final Four weekend and there's so many coaches there in town to see the 2 games and then leading up to the national championship game, the 1 game on Monday, there's just so much talk. And so a lot leaks, a lot comes out. Hey, this guy's talking to this team. And, you know, possibly it's going to be a move from, in this case, if it's Musselman, from a Mountain West Conference school to a Power 5 school being Arkansas. And when stuff like that comes out, like you said, it snowballs, and this is where we are right now. But there is that process because you've got to have that holding pattern of, all right, before this comes out, I got to go to Nevada and make sure I'm in Reno, and I talk to my team and let them know why I'm moving on, taking this position. And clearly, this would be, you would think, a pretty huge upgrade in terms of salary based on the fact he's only making about, for him, he's only making about $1 million at Nevada.
And what I was told is the board was uncomfortable. It didn't mean they wouldn't do it, but they were uncomfortable with the ideas. You got to understand, these board members don't just represent the Fayetteville campus. They represent all of the system campuses. Some of those campuses are having financial difficulties right now, most notably Arkansas Little Rock. There was a story in the statewide newspaper, I think yesterday, about that. Some of that maybe a hiring freeze and a lot of stuff going on there. And I was told that they felt like it would be a bad look with this North End Zone project that put them $160 million in debt with the bond issues, with the upcoming baseball thing they're trying to finance. Only probably half that's going to be financed. The rest of it's going to have to be a bond issue. And then there's track improvements coming. So if you're doing all of that, and you're also having problems selling tickets right now because your football program has got a problem and your basketball program isn't selling out, that it's not a good time to just start throwing astronomical salaries at people. So they would be much more comfortable with an up-and-coming guy. This guy's won 76% of his games in 4 years. He's demonstrated an ability to recruit. He brought a 5-star guy in out of high school to Reno, Nevada, so he can clearly recruit. He likes to go after JUCOs. That would be good news for here for right now. And again, I was told that he had already discussed this with his coaches. I don't know how they kept that from getting out to the media up there. But there hasn't been any like breaking stuff out of Reno that I know of. I mean, I saw one thing that might indicate that it could be happening. So maybe it's starting to leak out there. But let's talk about this guy, because that's the thing most people want to know about.
And that's the thing, is that if this does end up happening, which, again, so many reports out there that this is nearing finalization, that Eric Musselman will become the next head coach of the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is a guy who's won 3 straight Mountain West Conference championships. But let's talk about the fit, as you mentioned, because how would it play here? Okay. I think the main thing is you got to have an open mind here. I keep hearing these reports. You're hearing them that he's had issues with the media, and I think we need to throw that out there, because I'll tell you right now, I've never met the guy.
Sure.
Until he gets here, I think it's fair to say, all right, are those reports true? Who knows?
I brought this up on Hogville, which Pig Trail Nation, we're a sponsor of Hogville. We help sell their ads, so we tie in with them. And I brought this up last week when this all happened on Tuesday, and a bunch of those people got mad and said, you're just mad, you don't want him. You have an agenda against him. I do not have an agenda against him. I don't know him like you. And I will promise you, if I could put up with Lou Holtz for 6 years, I could put up with Musselman. It's not that. And I wasn't even told that he had problems with the media. I was told it was more with his assistant coaches. He burns through assistant coaches. because of his volatile nature. His players, sometimes he wears them out because he's really intense. And sometimes he's hard to work around, a la Bobby Petrino, who was real hard, had a reputation in the Broyle Center among people outside football of being a hard guy to deal with. But here's the thing about this guy. I've gone through 12 or 13 changes in coaches here in football and basketball in the years I've covered the Razorbacks. In almost every case, when they hire a coach after another coach has been fired, they hire somebody that's the exact opposite of that person in some way. Like, for instance, Brett Bielema, he ran that power offense that was very traditional. Then you go to Chad Morris, who runs one of the most unconventional offenses out there.
Power spread.
Yeah, it's so complicated, he still hadn't been able to get it installed right. So the total opposite, and you know, Bielema had made coaches mad in Texas. They didn't want. There was a feeling that Arkansas's recruiting had dropped off because Bielema had gone down there and told a bunch of those high school coaches, your offense that you run in this state don't work. You should do what I'm doing.
We'll line up with a fullback and sling it down your throat.
We've got Chad Morris, who loves all those high school coaches, and they love him. So again, the opposite of what you had. Okay, Musselman is supposedly the polar opposite of Mike Anderson. Mike Anderson's very quiet, reserved, some would say introverted. He doesn't call attention to himself. He walks in the arena in a suit. The most you ever see him get mad, he might be yapping at somebody a little bit, but he's not demonstrative. Supposedly, Musselman will get on a referee that he doesn't wear a suit. He wears a polo shirt and slacks, and he's known to pull that polo shirt off and run around without a shirt on.
Yeah, there's a lot of video out there on that.
Yeah, where they won a game and his wife wrote in magic marker the score of the game on his chest, and he ran around the arena holding his hands up and yelling. I mean, this is the kind of guy you're getting. He's just emotional, but that will play with people that love that kind of stuff, that want energy. And I think, honestly, it will work in Bud Walton because Bud Walton has not been itself for a while now. And when they hired Mike, they thought it was going to be that way. There were a few times it was, the Kentucky win, you know, with the slam at the end of the game by Mr. Walking on Air.
Yeah, Michael Qualls.
When that happened, that was great. There have been a few others. But if you get a guy in there like this with an in-your-face personality, with, hey, we're going to get this done, and they start winning games, I think it will transform that place back into what it was.
Well, it goes back to what we were talking about a week ago Tuesday when Mike Anderson was fired. We talked about, hey, moving forward, as we all know, winning is the cure-all. And this guy wins. I mean, obviously, he's done it at the Mountain West Conference level. So take it with a grain of salt. But at the same point in time, he's been to a Sweet 16. 2 years ago, he did that, actually 2017-18 season to be exact. And like you said, in-your-face guy, I mean, you're just looking at a fit where I think we also have to talk about what the negotiations would be like with Hunter Yurachek with this guy. And what I'm getting at is this. There have been some reports out there in Nevada that, hey, had such a great thing going at Nevada, still does. I mean, again, it hasn't been finalized that he's the next Arkansas coach, but has such a great thing going. I read one thing that, you know, why would you leave that based on all the leeway that Nevada gives him to run the program exactly how he wants to run it?
Yeah, I mean, and we don't know what he would say, but it sounds like he said he's coming. So, I mean, that's not a hard reason. I mean, I guess people that were at a school always think this guy is not going to leave their school. I just got news for you. Nevada's not, that's not up there in terms of college basketball. And the truth is, if Musselman comes here and wins, he may not stay very long. He could go somewhere else.
True.
There was this talk that even if they got Chris Beard, he's so good, he may be the best coach in basketball right now, in college basketball. So wouldn't he end up eventually at Duke or North Carolina or Kansas, a blue blood program? Well, maybe Musselman does that eventually.
Yeah.
So you may not get this guy forever, but that's the way this process works. And again, there are people on social media saying, why'd you fire Mike Anderson for this guy? He's not much better. This is the same reaction we got when people thought they were going to get Gus Malzahn in football, and they ended up with Chad Morris because they thought they said he's a nobody. Now they're saying Musselman's a nobody. Well, he's not a name, but that's because he's been out in Nevada where there's nobody around, just the people there, and you know, they're out in the boonies. But he has won 76% of his games. That's a lot of basketball games in 4 years. So if he can come in and do that here. But let me just say this. There was a story written about a week ago, and they were speculating on who had been hired, who had been fired, and who had been hired. And the only one at that point was the guy from Buffalo that went to Alabama.
Nate Oates, yeah.
But there was speculation, okay, what if Arkansas hires Sampson? And what if A&M hires Buzz Williams, which they now have? What does that do to the league? Because they pointed out that if all of those things happened, and now it's happened with Musselman, that it looks like it's happened with Musselman, they were saying, what's that going to mean when you have a basketball league with 14 coaches that are all highly respected and have all proven winners where they were before? They said, somebody's going to finish 14th, and that's not going to be a dummy. So what's it going to be like? If you're that guy that's 14th and you've won everywhere you've been, but now you come into this league, which has in 3 years gone from being a league where you get 3, maybe 4 teams in the NCAA tournament to 6, and now maybe 7 if the league gets even better. Now there's probably going to be an opening at LSU, so maybe that's the 14th spot initially. But this is all very interesting, the way this conference has changed in basketball in the last 3 years.
Yeah, exactly. We were talking about that last night, and you got to look at the likes of Avery Johnson, no longer at Alabama. And we mentioned Nate Oates now there, coming over from Buffalo. I mean, that's the point, is that this league has picked up and improved so much, and it's so much in the national spotlight now that, you know, a guy like Avery Johnson is no longer there. There's just such a, 1 or 2 possession difference between Alabama, Arkansas, and the teams on up. South Carolina was a 4 seed in the SEC tournament. And because they stumbled early in non-conference, didn't even make postseason. So it's just a weird scenario like that.
Even though he's had success there, I could see Frank Martin gone in a year or 2 if they don't somehow get back and become relevant in the NCAA tournament. It's hard to say, but there's just pressure everywhere.
Sure.
Everywhere. So Musselman takes this job. He doesn't have a long time to get it going. He's not going to get the 8 years Mike Anderson had, I will assure you that.
Yeah, we talked about fit because I want to get to that a little bit more, because the other thing is the hard-nosed, gritty mentality this guy brings, and I think that's the one thing is toughness, and you can throw out that word over and over and over again, but that's the main thing, because you mentioned it. I mean, Mike Anderson, you look at that team this past season, 18-16, they just didn't have it in a lot of games, and it's just a scenario where I think that in-your-face approach with Musselman, I think it would work. You got to be a little bit more open to it, and I think he would just bring a better half-court mentality as well.
One of the things I think eventually hurt Mike Anderson badly was the very thing that got him here in the first place. It's almost eerie to go back and look at that first day when he was hired, and if you read through the lines, what all these fans are saying, what all these ex-players are saying, we're getting Nolan back. We're getting Nolan back. Well, Mike was never Nolan. Their styles are totally different. He may have run a similar system, but Nolan was an in-your-face guy. He was a tough guy. Mike was more of a reserved, calm guy. And so what you may be getting back into with Musselman is, and another thing I was told was that during the semester break when Arkansas's basketball team, they got off that great start, 6-1, and then they kind of collapsed during the semester break period when they lost to some non-conference teams that they probably should have beaten. And then they had that 4-game losing streak early, then they rebounded, then it went on a 6-game losing streak, and then rebounded a little bit. That when all that was going on, Hunter Yurachek was telling people that he had watched Mike's early practices and noticed that there wasn't the intensity that he would have expected. So again, this may have something to do with the Musselman hire. So I guess what I'm saying is these things that were supposed to be a problem to this board member, whichever one it was, maybe Yurachek saw this as a good thing. I want intensity. I want an in-your-face guy. I want somebody that offends people, and I don't care. This is what you have to do to make your players tough.
No, I think they're all good points. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, if you're talking about one person who's against it, I mean, take that for what it is. I mean, you're looking at a guy that clearly was highly respected once he got his team's NCAA tournament. It's been 3 straight NCAA tournaments, and again, 3 straight Mountain West Conference titles. Rebounding margin, again, you're playing Mountain West Conference schools for the most part, but rebounding margin 2.5 in favor of Nevada. Arkansas's was the worst. I mean, they were the worst rebounding team in the SEC. You just got to put that out there.
All this talk about how Gafford kept getting knocked to the floor, and you don't want a guy like that.
Right.
You want him, but you don't want him doing that. You want him holding his ground.
Yep. Just in terms of numbers, 80 points per game Nevada scored this season. They gave up 67.
Yeah, that's interesting too, because if you had gotten Beard, you would have gotten a guy that's all about defense.
Yep.
And we were talking last night with somebody that told us that he predicted that that's where basketball is now headed, that you've got two teams in the national championship game that are all about defense. This could be a very low-scoring game.
Yeah.
And where some were predicting this will be a low-viewed national championship game because it will be boring, he was telling us that these things come and go, these trends. And that what's going to happen is all these fans are going to see the way these teams, it's really not boring if you watch the defense that they're playing. It's fascinating. It's also fascinating to watch, say, Texas Tech and compare the way they run their half-court offense to Arkansas, in which we saw once somebody made the decision to plow into the paint, they were just in there or else. They were going to go in there and just put up a shot no matter, or throw the ball away.
Yeah.
You watch Texas Tech, they'll get a guy go into the paint. If something's not there, he's back out or he's getting the ball back outside. They're very meticulous about how they run their offense and their defense, so it may look tedious, but if you study the process, it's almost like a chess game. And so he was predicting that's where we're headed. My point is that's not Musselman. I'm not saying his teams don't play defense, but he's more like Mike Anderson wants to be in terms of let's score 80 a game or 85 or whatever. But he also wants his guys to be tough and rebound.
What about the NBA experience? Because I think there was all that talk, obviously, about Kelvin Sampson, and he did very well as an assistant coach in the NBA after he had the 5-year show cause penalty, and he was sent packing from IU. Obviously, he got the $750,000 buyout from IU, and he got in trouble with the impermissible phone calls. But we moved on from that, and obviously he's got the new deal at Houston. But Eric Musselman is somebody with NBA experience as well. He is a former NBA head coach at Golden State and Sacramento. How much does that play a role in this, given the fact you look at his resume being long, the history is great, and I think Alyssa Orange actually has some reports here.
Hello. So Chris Murray, who is Nevada Sports Network, tweeting, confirmed multiple things with, it's been a good run with Chris Murray, talking about financial implications, if you want to go through and kind of read some of that and say what they're hearing on the Nevada end of the deal.
Okay. Appreciate that. Thank you. This is Chris Murray, as Alyssa just reported, and he's talking about the financial implications that Coach Musselman would owe Nevada a $1 million buyout and would have to forfeit all bonuses earned this season, including ticket revenue bonus, probably in the $200,000 range. I mean, you look at this, and he's also talking about how this is the second time Arkansas has hired a Nevada coach since 2016 after took swimming coach Neil Harper. Okay, that's just something I came across, but anyway, that's the beauty of Facebook Live, just trying to hear. Anyway, yeah, I think the main thing here is that you're looking at a guy, as I mentioned, with the NBA experience. Let's get to that for a minute because, he played at San Diego. He has CBA experience. He has the NBA experience. And I think when you factor all that experience in, if you're under Juracek, you're like, okay, this is going to help me in so many conversations, having a coach, knowing how he can relate to certain guys, what it's going to take to get them to the next level. And I think all those things play a part.
Sure. That's part of a recruiting pitch. I've coached in the NBA. I know what it takes to play there. I can get you there. There's no question that that's an issue. But again, he has a reputation of going after JUCOs. What I was told is he likes upperclassmen. What is that? That's the opposite of what we had this year at Arkansas. What did we see over and over again? You don't beat people with freshmen and sophomores. Mike Anderson was basically saying, look, they're going to grow up, but I need time. We saw that with Tennessee. They struggled when all those players, those upperclassmen on Tennessee's team this year, when they were freshmen and sophomores, they got beat. So this is a guy that likes to prevent that by using JUCOs. If he sees that he doesn't have enough upperclassmen in a particular roster, okay, I'll go fix this. I'll bring in some JUCOs. I need some upperclassmen. I need some. But he also can recruit high school guys because, again, he brought a 5-star into Reno, which cannot be easy.
But, Mike, you mentioned that, and I kind of want to play off that point because you've mentioned that over and over again, and it speaks to the nature of being a player at Arkansas. We've seen the likes of Bobby Portis play 2 years here, and he moves on, but he's a special kid. I mean, he's a kid that first-round pick, obviously, 2015 SEC Player of the Year. But I think you've said this over and over again. Yeah, I mean, freshmen and sophomores at Blue Bloods like Duke and Kentucky or Kansas, they can get you to the national championship. But at a place like Arkansas, not the case collectively.
Yeah, you've got to have upperclassmen. Now, there's another issue here. We spent, again, last night talking with somebody that I think had this analyzed pretty correctly about in-state talent. Arkansas, I don't know how many people know this, but Arkansas in basketball is the opposite of what it is in football. In football, you might get 4 to 5 to 6 SEC caliber players every year out of the state of Arkansas, which means they got to go get another 15 or so somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Basketball is the opposite of that. This is honestly a basketball state. The basketball in here, especially the AAU basketball, they produce guys that play at major colleges, and Mike had lost too many of those guys. There's a bunch more coming up, good players. So right off the bat, Musselman's going to have the ability. He's going from an opposite situation. Don't have much talent in Nevada. He's going into a state where people honestly are saying, hey, we got 3 people in this class that you could bring in and they're all good, or 4 or whatever. Now, can you get them? Are you going to continue to lose people to Kansas? Are you going to continue to lose people to Kentucky, to Florida? Or can you keep them home? That's going to be an interesting thing to watch once he gets here, if he's hired.
It might be right at the top of the list when you're talking about Eric Musselman.
But we don't know how he feels about that. I mean, he's kind of been going, I got to get these JUCOs. I don't know about this or that. So I mean, he may say, a lot of people feel like it doesn't matter if you lose in-state guys, if you get a comparable guy out of state.
But I do want to talk about development, too, because I think that's the other thing about looking at this past season and looking at the makeup of the roster for Arkansas and what they did not get out of certain guys, particularly guys they just brought in, Ethan Henderson, Ibi Ali. I mean, they got nothing from those guys. Ethan had a pretty good game against Providence, but that's the big thing is that, I'm sorry, but I mean, just outside looking in, and this is just me being fair because I want to have an open mind about this guy coming in, I just feel like this is somebody who has a track record for getting the most out of his players.
Well, we haven't talked about this, but how are the current players going to react to him if he's hired?
Great point,
Because, again, they're going to go from a guy that was pretty quiet. Now, here's the other thing with Mike Anderson. I tried to tell people, I never told Mike anything. I never felt like it was my place to go to him and say, you need to do this or that. I'm a media guy. But I did tell some of his people around him, the fact that he closed those practices all the time and never let anybody see what was going on created the image that floated around that he was soft, that players ran over him in practice, didn't listen to him. I have no idea if any of that's true. That's just people talking. And if you're not in there to see it, you don't know. So I don't know if the practices were soft, but if what some people are saying is true, then now that these players are about to go through a metamorphosis, a total 100% change. So what's that going to be like? To have somebody that's in your face like Nolan. You want to talk about the differences between Mike Anderson and Nolan Richardson? Nolan's practices were totally open, and he screamed and yelled at his players in that big bear voice all the time. And guys like Corey Beck and Corliss, who are tough guys, will tell you they were scared of him. They didn't dare cross him because they were scared of him.
Yeah, but I think that's something that we should focus on for a minute because we were talking about this last night. Ebb and flow of the season. That's the thing. I mean, you've got to look at this Texas Tech-Arkansas game that we saw earlier this season when Arkansas essentially lost on the final possession. I mean, you step out of conference play for an SEC Big 12 challenge, and there's just points in the season where you may have guys sick or injured. It's just part of the buy-in process that if you bring in a guy like Eric Musselman and he's expecting that out of you game after game after game, practice after practice after practice, that's where the buy-in starts there if you don't have that, then you can have some moments, as you mentioned, about semester break where it was all about basketball.
Yeah, I mean, there are some people that say that you can't coach that way anymore. You know, there's this movie, I don't know if you've ever seen it, Varsity Blues, and it's all about this overbearing coach that just does all kinds of crazy things, and his players revolt against him, and they refuse to go out on the field in the second half of the state championship game, and so he has to leave, and they coach themselves. That's a Hollywood liberal, goofy movie about coaches being mean, and we're gonna rail against that. The truth is, a lot of coaches are mean. Nobody forces you to be a part of an athletic team. Nobody says you got to play basketball. The people that do that, it's in their blood. Just like somebody that wants to be a geologist or somebody that wants to be a heart surgeon. If you're 6 years old and you want to be a college basketball player and you want to play in the NBA, then by the time you get out of high school, you've had tough coaches. And you should expect more tough coaches, because I can promise you that there's two ways to win national championships. You can go the Kentucky route and get all the top quality guys and just try to win it with talent. But the teams that usually win it are the ones like Texas Tech, where every single guy is buying in. They understand that they're only a cog in the wheel, they are not more important than any other part of that. They're just a component. And so you have to sacrifice what you may think at any given time to what's best for the team. And if you can get guys to buy into that, you can move mountains. I've seen it happen too many times. A good example of somebody that coached that way, John McDonald. He always coached that way. He did not have to yell and scream at his guys. He just set down the way it was going to be from the beginning. Then his freshmen would grow up in that system. By the time they were juniors and seniors, they're telling these new guys that are coming in, hey, you better not do that. John finds out, you're in trouble. And then all he had to do was look at somebody the wrong way. And they were like, oh, no, I don't want to make him mad. National championships, because guys were giving up what they thought was best for them to what John McDonald thought they should contribute it to the team. And on the opposite of that is people that are selfish. They're not playing me enough. They're not putting me in a role I want to be in. We've seen a lot of guys transfer out of this program in the last 2 or 3 years. I expected more out of that. He wasn't putting me in a position to be an NBA player. I don't buy into that stuff. That's not his job. That may be the reality, is you have to convince some certain guys that you can get them to the NBA. But the nuts and the bolts of that is, if he's not starting you, and you take the attitude, I'm going to leave, then you do need to leave. And so I think you're getting a guy that's not going to put up with that.
Yeah, it goes back to the sense of entitlement thing. I mean, if you have that too much in your culture, it's just not going to work. And, you know, Jarrett Culver on down at Texas Tech, you don't see that. And that's why they're in the national championship. Also, with the fact that they have a style that's really working, because they're probably the best defensive team in the country. Held Michigan State to a season low last night. I want to close with this, Mike. Just one more take from you as we kind of round this out and go back to the outset of this conversation. Multiple reports saying Eric Musselman is closing in on a deal to become the next head hog for men's basketball. This guy, how do you think this is going to play coming in? Because you've been here 40-plus years, and you know a lot of people in the area, and you've seen so many coaches come through. Knowing what this guy is about and coming into this area, obviously he's been a lot of places. He's coached in the NBA, as I mentioned. How do you think people will receive this if it happens?
The typical fan that is not message board connected or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, they just listen to the games. Maybe they don't have season tickets, but they watch it on TV and they do care about it. They're going to accept who you hire. They're going to trust that the people that were in charge of the hire knew what they were doing, and this is a good guy, and they will wait and see if he really is, but they will certainly start off thinking, okay, this is good. Message board people, I've watched it, Twitter, Facebook, I've watched this for ever since Tuesday when the name first popped up, and it is a polarizing thing. You've got people saying, I'm giving up my basketball tickets, I'm done with the program. You've got people laughing at them and saying, if you're doing that, you shouldn't have been a fan in the first place. We're excited about this guy. You've got people that say, he's not an upgrade over Mike Anderson. You've got people saying, you're crazy. He's definitely an upgrade. So the argument, which always takes place in social media, is already started. And that's where it will be until they play their first season under this guy and we really see, if it's him, until we really see what he can do. Up going to have these arguments all through the summer, all into the fall until games start being played. He's the right guy. We got a good, young, up-and-coming guy. Didn't have to pay an arm and a leg for him. Or you guys are stupid. You should have kept the coach we had. That's going to be going on for months.
And so many people are going to pay attention to the numbers as well. As we know, Arkansas, under Mike Anderson, had its best season, 27 wins under Coach A, that is, in 2014-15 when they had Bobby Portis, Landis Harris, Michael Qualls, Kai Madden, guys like that. Looking at Eric Musselman, 4 years at Nevada, 24 wins, 28 wins, 29 wins, 29 wins. Again, Mountain West Conference is the ringer you go through, if you want to call it that. Not so much, obviously, as the SEC, but how will that translate? We talked about that earlier. Given how the SEC has evolved, it's gotten so much better within the last 3 or 4 years. All right, continuing coverage on this story. Obviously, multiple reports out there that Eric Musselman from Nevada is closing in on a deal to become the new head basketball coach at Arkansas. We'll keep you posted here in the Picture L Nation. For Mike Irwin, Drew Hammond, we'll see you.